Welcome to the Boundless Bible. My name is David Shapiro.
Hey, I'm Javi Marquez.
And I'm Jason Holloway.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Doing well. How are you guys?
Hey, good morning.
Always a pleasure to see you.
Same, Javi.
Yes,
Same.
I know. I know you guys can't, but I can see the guys. So we got a good one today. We're speaking about Moses, one of our favorite characters for sure. And we're going to speak about the burning bush. Well, if you don't know about the burning bush,
David,
will
tell us about it.
tell you how about it.
Well, I'll tell you what is interesting about this is when you look at personal relationships, a lot of people go, I want a personal relationship with God. I know that that's what God wants with us is personal relationship. And we always look at it from our perspective. What do we need to do in order to get a personal relationship with God? And we've talked about prayer and reading your Bible and things like that. But there are things that God does to show us that he wants a personal relationship as well.
Yeah.
And that comes out really beautifully in this burning bush story of how God is showing how he wants this personal relationship with us. And it starts off with, when he's calling Moses, first of all, Moses is, he's shepherding sheep at this point. He's doing something completely different than trying to honor God or pray to God at this moment. He's just kind of living out his life. And God calls him in that very ordinary place of life and going, hey, Moses. And then he says it twice, Moses, Moses. He is showing him that he knows his name.
Yeah.
He recognizes him. He's calling him by name to come over and to speak with him. So this is a very personal moment where Moses has to answer. And he goes and he sees this burning bush, and it's not consuming the bush. It's just burning. And as he approaches it, again, this becomes an area where God has put this holy ground for them to have this discussion. And Moses comes, and what does God say to Moses before he steps on that ground?
I love it. He goes, hey, take off your sandals, man. Don't want to contaminate this holy ground, right? It's so interesting.
He does. He said, Now, what's interesting about this is when you look at holy ground, the word for it, admat Kodash, is the word in Hebrew for it.
Okay.
It is the exact same word that was used for the dirt that made Adam.
Oh, wow.
So what he is saying is, I'm taking ordinary dirt and I am making it holy by my presence. He took the ordinary dirt and he made it holy by making Adam.
Mm-hmm.
And this is him starting off the moment by telling Moses, this is holy ground.
Yeah.
Not only by the words of saying, hey, this is holy ground, but how he's using that terminology by saying, this is exactly the same dirt that I made Adam out of.
Well, it also sounds like he's saying this is a place of transformation.
That's really good.
Right?
Yeah.
And whether or not it's about the place and the holiness of the place, it's the dwelling place of God in this moment in which transformation is possible.
No, yeah. See, I didn't even think about it in that terms, and that's great.
Yeah, and look, I think this whole story is interesting because we're talking about personal relationship. And when I first came back to the church, one of the things that I kept hearing was that, God wants a personal relationship with you, and when you're struggling with things, it's about the personal relationship. And that wasn't something I heard when I was growing up in the church. So it was a new concept to me, and I did a little bit of research on it. And there's kind of a little bit of controversy about that. A lot of people kind of say that it's not a biblical concept per se.
Mm-hmm.
That the personal relationship is what God wants. But as we've been talking about this story, kind of even between us, it may not be something that's explicit in the Bible, but it is implicit. And I think we can talk about it today about how it is implicit. And you started by saying that Moses was called by God directly by name as an individual to come to this place and listen to his word. And, that's the first of many implicit, calls from God to a human to say, let's talk.
Absolutely. And also the going back to the holy ground part, although there are some, conflict on whether or not we should be calling personal God and things like that, it is very important to remember that he's inviting us close, but with reverence.
Yes.
Come speak to me, but this is holy ground.
Yeah. I was going to say that. You talk about personal relationship, and the first thing I think about is there's certain approaches that we need to do. God is saying, hey, you can have a personal relationship with me, but understand that there's certain ways to approach me. There's
Agreed.
ways to kind of understand that. Let's understand our relationship too. It's almost like, I'll give you an example, Jason, you and your son, right? There's a certain way how he needs to speak to you as a father, right? Or like, I'm not your friend.
Or else.
Yeah, or else.
Just kidding. No,
Right?
look, and I think it's also really, really important, and I don't know if you guys agree with this, but I think it's really important to say in this example, God is creating the personal relationship with Moses, and he wants that personal relationship with Moses, but he's doing it so that Moses can go out and have a relationship with others. So it's not that the religion or, Christ is looking only for a personal relationship. It's that he wants a personal relationship and he wants us to have a relationship with others.
Yeah.
And sometimes he becomes the relationship that we have with God is that facilitator that we can have relationship with others.
Absolutely. The other thing he does, which is really just beautiful, is, we always say God meets you right where you are.
Right.
Yeah.
And, when you hear it long enough, you're like, I don't know what that means. The church says it's supposed to make me feel good. Here's the moment where God is literally doing that. And the reason you know that is when he starts talking to Moses and he says, I'm the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, Moses hid his face and he was afraid to look at God.
Yeah.
Moses is feeling whether it's shame from his life, whether it's I shouldn't be here, my self-worth, whatever Moses is feeling at that moment, he's hiding his face from God, and God is still appearing to him exactly where he is,
right?
As a shepherd, as a criminal who was exiled, and God is going, no, I'm here for you.
Let's talk for a second about what it means when we say that God meets you where you are. I think again, like you said, I think it's a really good point. This is one of those things that you hear a lot, and yet it kind of has either lost its meaning or you never fully understood it. You just went, yeah, that sounds good. And you kept moving. But what does it mean for God to meet you where you are? It means in one sense, it can mean that you don't feel worthy of going to seek out God. So you don't go seek out God because you don't think it's going to be a positive experience. But God comes to you and says, I'm approaching you because I want you to know that you're worthy. I'm approaching you in your fault because I see you differently than you see yourself.
Yeah.
And yet another way of looking at it, especially in this, in a really literal term, it's like Moses didn't go to church for this to happen. Moses wasn't seeking it out. Moses was just doing his daily work.
Right.
He was just going about his regular life, and bing, this thing, caught his attention.
Yeah, your number's up.
Right. It caught his attention. And interestingly enough, it caught his attention and he didn't go seek it out, right?
Yeah.
And then it caught his attention again and he didn't seek it out. And then God literally was like, hey, you over here.
Yeah.
And, this is what we do too. Like occasionally we're sitting in our, daily lives and we get this moment of inspiration and we realize that maybe we should be doing X, Y, or Z, but we're like, yeah. And we just ignore it and ignore it. I think this is what God says. Listen, dummy, pay attention.
Yeah. What I feel when they say God meets you where you're at, it's God knows your struggles. God knows what you're going through, and He's meeting you where you're at. He's understanding. He's being compassionate he's being empathetic is the right word.
Yeah.
It's to your feelings and what you've done, and He's there with you, and He's going to walk along with you to overcome this hurt, overcome this struggle and stuff like that. And that's what I feel like when I hear that, like God meets you where you're at. He's going to be there for you. He knows what you've been through. He understands it. You know what I'm saying? And you could go to him for anything, for counsel. You go to him for direction. And I think God is beautiful in that way. And when I see this with Moses kind of showing up there, he's just calling Moses, like his number is up, meaning maybe he was struggling with certain things. Maybe he killed someone, right? So he's struggling with the fact still through these days, maybe like I've murdered somebody. I'm not worthy. And God is meeting him, go, hey, now's the time. Come here, my son. Take off your shoes, but let's talk.
Take off your shoes, but let's talk. Right?
Yeah. Well, we'll never qualify ourselves in the right way. We always have our past. We always have different things, the doubts. So God is qualifying us for things that we would never qualify ourselves for. And then it works in the same way. Sometimes we qualify ourselves for things that we just shouldn't.
We shouldn't, right?
And, and here God is saying very specifically, hey, Moses, I see you hiding your face.
Right.
I have something for you. And then he goes into what he needs from him.
Right.
I've been watching the Israelites. I'm watching their suffering. And you're going to go and work through me.
Yeah.
You're going to free the Israelites from the Egyptians. And it's not a, hey, can you do this?
Right.
I am qualifying you. You are going to go and do this. Whether you felt called to, whether you felt qualified to beforehand, I am calling you and I am qualifying you. And then Moses does something really interesting before he goes into the denial of, no, I shouldn't do it. That's not me.
Okay.
He goes, all right, if I come to the people of Israel, because again, I was raised Egyptian, they don't see me as Israeli.
Right.
Who do I say you are? How are they going to believe me?
Now, before you go into that, I wanted to go back into how God show up and speaking to him.
Okay.
It was a burning bush.
Yep.
Right? Moses probably thought he was hallucinating of some sorts or whatever it is. And I just feel like God shows up in different ways to speak to us.
Mm-hmm.
And that could go through a friend, that could go through a prayer, that could go through an audible voice, to us. It could be through a dream that God speaks to us now to this day. Here, it just so happens that he spoke to Moses through the burning bush for many reasons. I do not know why, but he did. And I just thought that was kind of interesting. Maybe there's something there within the Hebrew or something.
Not that I know of. There very well maybe.
Yeah.
I think that, when you think of anything that's going to catch your attention, when you see a burning bush, especially again, you're talking about somebody who is living outdoors or living in the wilderness, things probably are, they see smoke and things burning down all the time. You have to be
right.
But it's when it wasn't consumed. It's when something's on fire and it's not consumed. And that could be symbolic for a lot of...
That's what I was going to say. Look, I could spend a really long time just going through all the symbolism.
Yeah.
Because every time I think about it, I think of something new. Like right in this very moment, what's going through my head is that fire is not consuming a material substance.
Okay.
Which is the typical thing that fire would do, right? Fire doesn't burn. And so that's like us. We are the material substance. And when God is in us, even the fire doesn't burn us down. The fire of hell, the fire of sin, the fire of, the fiery depths of sin aren't burning us. And it's him saying, and then on the other hand, there's a totally other side where, in the Old Testament, don't they also call God, God is the fire. God is the fire of good in the Old Testament as well. So in this case, you can look at the bush and say, we are still the bush, except this time we are consumed by fire. What do you say when you're really like inspired by God? You're on fire for the Lord.
Yeah.
So maybe, he was coming to his own fire of himself, and the bush represented him, and he was going to be on fire for the Lord, which he was. And like I said, this is a crazy one because and then there's another interpretation I heard one time that had something to do with the thorns on the bush, and that life will continue to stab at you and you'll be burned, but nothing's going to happen. You're going to be okay. And so it's just so full and so rich of symbolism. And I think we have to ask ourselves, what is our burning bush?
Mm-hmm.
When in our own lives, when God is meeting us where we are, what's the burning bush that we're not paying attention to? What's the thing in our life that is an oxymoron? What is the thing in our life that is, defying convention? What is the thing in our life that doesn't seem possible but is? And here we are ignoring it.
Yeah. Or again, going into the symbolism, which it just kind of hit me, is this a mirror of Moses? And the reason I say that is Moses feels small. Okay. When we expect God to appear, it's going to be a burning tree, a burning mountain. It's a bush.
Yeah.
In Hebrew, it's called sneh. It's small. So he is coming as a small burning bush. Again, we have this image of this is fantastic.
Yeah.
I've never seen it. But he's coming as something very small, not what God could come as. And maybe he's, making himself smaller, again, as the mirror of Moses. You're coming to me very small, but look at all the power behind this. You're not going to be consumed. Being as small as you are, releasing the Israelites, you are not going to be consumed. Again, we can probably go on.
It occurs to me now too that in this case, fire is probably not hell and damnation because, I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Because in a few more chapters, the fire is going to lead them through the desert at night in order to guide them. So in this case, fire is almost definitely a goodness. It's the fire of God. It's the power and the strength of God. Again, being connected to a very temporal, biological substance, but yet not burning it.
No, I like what you said, David. You said the fire maybe it was small and it was just a bush and it was snake.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he had to approach it that way to Moses and not maybe scare him off or something, right? It was to come down and split the heavens opens to come speak to him. Maybe that could have been, which he does eventually. But
At that time,
It could have been too much.
Yeah, it could be overwhelming with what's going on. So I think a burning bush, or whichever way God at times, I think, speaks to us, it's right for us to hear.
Well, I think Jason hit the nail on the head, which is we hear the burning bush, and an image goes into our mind. Whether it came from a movie, the 10 Commandments, and we watched that, whether it came from something comes to our mind, and we think of this glorious moment.
Yeah.
And the symbolism is different also for every one of us. Every one of us.
And I think that's a beautiful thing too, is like, it doesn't need to be one of these symbolisms or not. It's like, if you attach yourself to the one that makes the impact in your life and hold on to that, that's almost completely the wonder of the Bible. Like, it doesn't need to have a singular meaning. It needs to have a singular meaning that attaches to you, which is a really great segue to the personal relationship with God, right? And it doesn't have to be the general relationship with God. It's about the unique individual who's reading and interpreting and then processing and how they do so. And that's why you can read the burning bush, and you can read the burning bush, and I can read the burning bush, and we see it differently.
Right.
We feel it differently. We understand it differently, but it still leads to the same place.
Absolutely.
I love that.
And then we get back into where we were going, which is, God says his name, and this is the same thing. This, over the years, has debated about what this means. How do you interpret God's name? Because he says, I am that I am.
Right.
Okay. Which in Hebrew, Ayeh Asher Ayeh. Okay. This is I am that I am. But it has been defined in different ways. One is just how it is. I am that I am. I'm self-existent. I'm self-defining. This is who I am. I'm here. Another one, which I really love, there's a brilliant professor that I heard this from saying, I will be who I will be, which is also the same translation.
Mm-hmm.
And this is ongoing, active, present in our lives. This is, I will be how I will be. The way he puts it is, I will be there however I shall be there.
That's good.
Kind of letting us know, I will always be God. I will always be steady. I'll always be me, and I'll always be there.
Yeah.
I am that I am.
Yeah.
And it's such a beautiful, that you want to talk about a blanket at night.
Selfish plug there. We did the whole God's consistency episode, and it just shows you there, even his name.
This is one of the things that philosophically I've probably spent one of the most amount of times on, because I find this to be the core of everything.
Yeah.
Literally the core of everything. Like, he says, I am that I am, which again, that has different translations. I'm reading a couple other translations that are out there. I am who I am. I will become what I choose to become is another one.
Yeah.
I will be what I will be is another one.
That's good.
And one that I like. I create whatever I create.
Okay.
And last, I am the existing one.
Yep.
And philosophically,
I love
that. This so deep.
You know why I love that so much? Because I think when we think about a personal God, we want God to be the way we want God to be.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, when we think about relationships, that's the tough thing about relationships. I'm married. So, me and my wife, sometimes what the tough thing is, I can't control her. I can't, whatever. Not that I want to control her, but
nor can she control you.
She can't control me.
Two people,
And that's the tough thing about relationships sometimes. You can't, the unexpected, right? There's this
expectation.
Expectation that you kind of have sometimes. And when we're talking about personal God, I want God to do what I want him to do when I want him to do it, and say and speak to me how I want it. And
it's so hard not to quote Talladega Nights right now.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
And then, so hearing that and hearing the different ways of kind of interpretation of that, here I am. What is that? Here I am.
I am what I am.
I am what I am. And it's like, he's going to come the way he's going to come. And that's the way God is. And we have to be accepting of that. And that's how we could grow in our relationship. And we let go of the control that we want for God.
Yeah. This is going to get deep. So bear with me for a second.
Good.
I think that when we're talking about I am what I am, you have to think, we always talk about God being bigger than we can imagine, right? And it's easy for us. We kind of have to like personify God, because that's the way that we see him. And when you do that, Javi, like you said, you have expectations for him.
Yeah.
You want him to show up in a certain way. But if God is the universe creator, the force behind all forces, the action, the reaction, the cause, the effect, the connection to all things, the thing that keeps all the energy and the momentum that keeps life moving.
Right.
That is far bigger than anything that we're talking about here when we're looking at a person, right? And I am what I am means just that. I am everything. I am not the physical manifestation of the thing that you love. I'm not the food. I'm not the person you love. I'm not the car you drive. I'm not the wood that you have to build your house. I am the force that made those things happen at all. I am not you. I am the breath. I'm the reason you can breathe at all. And when you stop and take a look, in fact, I was at a Bible study last night. We were kind of like touching on this subject.
Yeah.
And, it's not the car that you drive that gets you to work that you should be thankful for. It's the fact that you have a breath in your lungs and the heartbeat in your heart that even allows you to wake up to do it. And stepping even further down that rabbit hole, it's the fact that you have enough energy in your brain to be aware and conscious of any of this stuff.
Yeah.
That's where God lives. God is in the consciousness of the universe. He's the maker and the creator of all things. When you take a moment to realize how big, how vast, how powerful, how awe-inspiring it is that every molecule in this universe hit every other molecule and knocked into every other molecule and connected with every molecule to create the things that have been created, to create the things that were created, to ultimately mean that I'm going to be able to sit here right now and say a word and you're able to understand it. Wow.
Yeah.
Love it.
Unbelievable. Like gigantic, enormous, incredible, vast. There's no words for it.
Right.
And this is what I am.
Yeah.
I am all that you could ever think of and billions and trillions of times more.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's okay that we can't grasp that. We're human.
Right.
We will never grasp the size, the scope of everything you just laid down. It's impossible.
Right.
We can't.
But it's important to have the context of it, right? And this is the thing. When you realize how vast that is, it finally gives you context for how vast you aren't.
Right.
And this is the reason why I have to be humble in my life. And I can't live my life for me because little teeny insignificant me can't possibly know enough to make good decisions.
Yeah.
Can't possibly know enough to choose right over wrong every time. Can't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's that humility that I have to have in realizing my relationship in contrast to God that allows me to truly respect God, to come with that sense of reverence we talked about.
Yeah.
And when I have that sense of reverence, now I'm rightly aligned with God because I see how big.
Yeah, that's when I always mention like, God is infinite and we're just finite. We're finite.
Super finite.
God is infinite and we're finite. We're small. We're this little speck, and once we understand that relationship grows in a sense, we could have a better relationship. We could live in unison in that way. With God.
But the personal relationship that he's having with us is he knows how he can understand how large he is.
It's not a one-way street.
Correct.
We know how big he is, but he also knows how small we are, and he knows how much we need, and he still chooses to be with us.
And then I'm going to do a really quick fast forward in the story of Moses because you have Moses who's at the burning bush, top of the mountain. He's having this conversation with God. Fast forward to through all of Egypt. He goes to Egypt. Everything happens.
Right.
They leave Egypt. They come back, and then he gets the 10 Commandments. And what he's getting, where he's getting the 10 Commandments is on top of the exact same mountain.
The same mountain, yeah.
He has come full circle.
Mount Sinai?
God has put him full circle. He goes, where you met me is where you're going to learn about me, where I'm giving you the law, where I'm going to be with you, he is going full circle in the relationship. And with us, that's really comforting also because there are times where we feel like, hey, I've met you here. I have this feeling. Life happens. It sometimes goes away. I have doubt. I have desert. I have, the fear of where the next food's coming from. I have fear of my enemies at my back. Life creeps up.
Yeah.
And then at the very end of that, God still meets us exactly where he is and where we are. And it's full circle, and it goes, he's always there.
Yeah,
I am what I am.
It reminds me back,
Agreed.
What we were talking about before with the whole personal and just kind of like God and how to approach him and stuff like that. I think the 10 Commandments is just that. I think it's, we are made to yearn for like discipline. We just are. We want to be free, and we are free in many ways, but discipline helps us to grow, helps us to cultivate. It helps us to build relationships with God, and especially in that way, and I sometimes look at rules and just kind of like, oh my God, but God is personal. He's also there loving and all this other stuff.
Well, I think the personal relationship with God is how we create a better version of ourselves. Because I know I'm not capable of running my own life well. But when I have that personal relationship with God and I have my prayer life right with God,
Right.
and I understand my place is very, very low on the totem pole versus God, and I keep my eyes towards God and I try to act more like God, I'm going to end up being better. I'm going to end up being better, not because I'm better, but because He's making me better.
Yeah.
And
the thing about that, you sparked the thing in my head right now, is in my mind. You know, you're talking about life. Life is, we don't do life alone. Meaning, you could do life alone and be alone, but there's everything that's happening around us that's happening as well. Like, I'll give you an example in the sense of things are happening. We have to deal with people at the grocery store. We have to deal with circumstances that happens to in our life, and how do we approach those things without having some kind of direction with approach to approaching those things. I'm not trying to veer off too much, but you made me think about that.
I think this is right. I mean, this is right though. Like, again, the idea is that I am insufficient in my own will and in my own knowledge, and on a daily basis, by being closer to God, by having that personal relationship which He offers me, it's just like having a support system of people around me because He's telling me the right thing to do. And when I start going the wrong way, He goes, nope, not that way. Now, granted, I do want to segue into, I don't think that Christianity can be a solo relationship or an only personal relationship, because that's not how this works. Like, we are still flawed characters, and we live in our own heads if we live in our own heads, we're going to end up in the wrong place.
Right.
And I think that the importance of what Moses is being called to do is he isn't being called to have a personal relationship and stay on top of that mountain by himself.
Right.
He's being called to go back into Egypt, to collect his people, to reinvest what God is giving him into those people, and then all of them keep themselves. And look, and what happens when they leave Egypt? The minute he goes up to the top to go get those 10 commandments you talked about, those people fell apart. They created an idol because they couldn't wait a couple days to figure out what to do, and they created this idol. And so this is, again, it turns into a great story about how the personal relationship that God is offering you is for the benefit of you, but also so that you can benefit others.
That's good. That's exactly what I was trying to get at. Yeah.
And then once you benefit those others, now they can benefit you back. And this is where you get this really beautiful cycle of community. And a community who believes together holds one another accountable. And that accountability, I think accountability in our society today has a negative connotation, but accountability is what we all need, right? We all need the accountability to say that I'm on the right track. I'm staying on the right track. If you guys were to see me going in the wrong direction, you would tell me, hey, look, you should probably, pray about that, or you should probably do this, or hey, why don't you come with me to something else to not do those things? Like, it's all related, but the personal relationship is the beginning of it all.
Yeah. And I think just, this is one of those episodes where, I'm feeling just convicted. Just to recap really quickly, and, there's a lot here. And we're talking about personal relationships. I'm kind of looking at it going, we have a story here where somebody was not looking for God. God reached down and started the conversation, initiated it. So yes, I love God, knowing that God initiated that love first. I responded with love. God has reached out to all of us. We are responding with that communication back, that love back. And it's for many purposes. It's for our own symbolism. It's for relationships that we have in our lives. But if we answer the call of love, if we answer the communication, the personal relationship God's looking to have with us, as massive as it seems, as huge as things that we're not going to be able to ever understand, we just have to know that He is there. He is talking to us, and He is showing us love, and we just need to respond with such. Just talk back and show love back.
Yeah, I totally agree. The other thing I think is really interesting when you mentioned the idea that He goes back to the same mountain again is, I've mentioned there's an Asian quote that is actually, I think, even earlier related to Heraclitus, and he says, "A man never steps in the same river twice." And I think this is the other beautiful thing about God is, like, Moses started on that mountain not connected to God. And later he comes back to that same mountain totally changed. So even, I think that's what God does. He doesn't change the place, He changes the person.
That's great.
right? And he's changing the person of Moses in the same way that if he's calling you with his burning bush today, he's going to change you as well. He's going to, you may live in the same house, you may have the same family, you may have the same friends, you may do the same things roughly, but you're going to be changed.
Yeah.
If you accept that call and if you accept the love and the personal relationship with Jesus.
Yeah. And I think you're really, I mean, not to like dabble in heretical thing, but like I think your personal relationship with God is your personal relationship, meaning he's going to speak to you in a certain way
in the way that you need to be spoken
that
to.
you need to be spoken to, you know? And I think that's a beautiful thing, because for me to hear it and the way David maybe hears God in that way, or God is calling him to do, I probably won't be able to do, you know, or for you, Jason, like, right. He calls to me in my abilities, you could say, or whatever I could do, or whatever he speaks to me, how I could understand what he's saying to me is it's personal.
I don't think it's heretical at all. I think we see that in the Bible over and over and over.
For sure.
Again.
I'm just saying,
we see God
even
reaching
Paul.
out.
Well, even Paul. You know, Paul, and when he's speaking to the Romans, he speaks differently than when he speaks to Hebrews.
Yep.
I mean, he literally changes. He uses their philosophers. In Hebrews, I think it is.
Right.
Or no, sorry, Romans. In Romans, I think he uses their philosophers to prove his points.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting that's there. That it doesn't have to be the same. Like you said, it doesn't have to be the same.
Hey, we're going to speak about that in a second. About
is it really a second?
Evangelizing.
Well, we'll talk about it. Well, guys, anything else you want to add to this topic?
No, I think that if right now you're sitting at home and you are feeling convicted and you're having this conversation and you feel the tug on your heart and you hear God speaking to you and you want this personal relationship with God, I think, we set it for here, which is just everyone's going to have their own version of their relationship with God as far as how he calls out to them. You have to speak back. You have to show him love the way he's showing you. And if you're still confused or you feel like, hey, I was put in this community and God wants me to talk more about this, we're here. So open up and have a conversation with us. Talk to us on our socials. Let's talk about it. This is one of those moments where, God is really trying to have a personal relationship with us, which with everything that Jason laid down really should astound you. Somebody who can do everything that God has done wants to have a relationship with us. And we can see this being true and lived out in the Bible. This is an amazing thing. So I hate everything I just said. I'm going to step back and
all right, guys.
Wrap this up.
Well, look, that was great. That was really great. And if this podcast is your burning bush, we'd love to hear about it.
Amen.
Thanks a lot, guys. Socials, you know how to get a hold of us. David's got a discussion group on Facebook discussion group. And please, with the subscribes and the likes and the ratings are really, really helpful for us, guys. We'd appreciate that. And as always, we appreciate your time. Thanks a lot.
See you.
Have a great day.